Hey there, deep divers. It's Julie B, and today I'm diving into Season 2, Episode 4 of The Last of Us. Well, the mourning period for Joel is over, and the show is moving full steam ahead now, with Ellie and Dina at the forefront, as they've arrived in Seattle. And we start the episode with a flashback to 2018 Seattle, with a truck full of Fedra soldiers in full gear. A soldier tells a story about a violent attack by another soldier on a civilian, as they cruelly laugh about it. They refer to civilians as voters in a mocking tone, and their sergeant Isaac notes that they started calling them that as a joke after they took away their rights, including the right to vote. Spotting a large number of civilians on foot, Isaac gets out of the truck and tells them all to stay inside, breaking protocol, except for this one soldier he takes with him, looking like a terrified deer in the headlights. In a tense moment, without saying a word, Isaac approaches the crowd of people and meets a woman named Hanrahan. Then he walks in silence back to the truck, tosses a grenade inside, and locks the soldiers in to die. The one he brought with him is stunned, and Isaac tells him to choose sides now, apparently sparing him from death because he seems malleable enough to get him to follow his lead. And indeed, the soldier chooses to follow him, and Hanrahan tells Isaac, "Welcome to the fight." So now we have an explanation for how the W.L.F. in Seattle managed to get their hands on all of their military gear, tanks, automatic weapons, etc. They did it by staging a coup against Fedra there. Back to the present day, Ellie and Dina are scavenging for supplies in Seattle, and Dina finds what we later learn to be a pregnancy test and takes it. The two of them enter a part of the city that apparently used to be a gay part of town before the apocalypse, and wonder what the rainbow flags and murals mean, which is surprising. I mean, it's understandable that people stop celebrating things like Pride Month, but in Jackson, they managed to celebrate Christmas and other holidays, so why not Pride Month? And you would think they'd at least recognize the symbolism of the rainbow with the gay community. Anyway, it's fitting that this is the area they've stumbled upon because later in this episode, they officially get together as a couple. Finding a Fedra tank and soldiers' bodies, Ellie surmises that they died fighting each other since they're all wearing Fedra gear. This must have been part of a kind of civil war amongst their ranks, as some of them probably aligned themselves with Isaac and the W.L.F., while others sided with Fedra. Dina spots a communications tower marked W.L.F., and Ellie wants to go rushing over there, recklessly, but Dina stops her and points out that if they painted that up so high, they must want people to know they're there. So they have to go about this another way, under cover of night and on foot. Dina is still surprisingly the more street-smart and savvy one, and Ellie is impulsive, so she'd really be lost without Dina on this mission. Remember, Dina was the one who planned their entire trip as well, knowing all the right supplies to bring, while Ellie was just winging it. They find a place to hole up with their horse for the time being in an old record store. Inside, Ellie discovers a guitar and starts playing a gorgeous rendition of Take On Me by a-ha. The lighting is gorgeous. Nature has retaken the cities due to the apocalypse, with vines and shrubbery making their way inside and the sun backlighting Ellie through the big gaping hole in the wall. Yes, the apocalypse is a horrific thing, but there's a certain beauty to the visual of nature retaking the earth. Dina comes in and listens, her eyes welling up with tears as she looks lovingly at Ellie. Clearly she has strong feelings for her, despite her casual demeanor as a friend and joking around all the time. And the subsequent scene to this is a jarring swerve following such a loving, emotionally, and aesthetically beautiful scene. Here we have Isaac talking to an unseen person about how he always wanted copper Williams-Sonoma cookware one day, but he couldn't afford them. And he essentially says he got his wish, but it wasn't like he imagined it. He's not using them for cooking. He heats a copper pot on a gas stove, talking in an ominous tone about how quickly they heat up. Then we finally see who he's been talking to. A naked, filthy, beaten-up man chained to the wall. He's a Seraphite, aka a Scar, named Malcolm, a member of the religious cult first featured in episode 3. We saw a group of them with the scars on their faces who got annihilated by W.L.F. members. Malcolm keeps repeating, "She watches over me," and Isaac says, "You know there are even Scars who don't believe she's some magic fairy in the sky," and some of you actually believe she was just a person. Malcolm calls these people heretics. So it turns out we saw an example of this so-called heretic type of scar in episode 6, because the man who was talking to this little girl told her that their prophet wouldn't magically protect them, that they needed to defend themselves and just live by her teachings. Isaac asks Malcolm where his people are attacking next, and he corrects him with their proper name, Seraphites. Apparently they don't like being called scars. He refuses to say where the next attack will be, so Isaac burns his hand with the scalding hot pot. Outside of the room, one of the guards is horrified at the sound of the scar's screams, but the other guard with him tells him to shut up and says Isaac knows what he's doing. He must have more authority because the unsettled guard here says, "Yes, sir," but we don't see the face of his superior yet. Clutching his burned hand, Malcolm repeats, "She watches over me. She fills my soul." And Isaac points out, "You put an arrow in a little boy's head. Does she tell you to kill children?" Malcolm counters to this, "You kill our children." And Isaac says, "Never by choice. You trained them to shoot us." And in response to this, Malcolm says they trained the kids to shoot wolves because the wolves kill them. And they keep going back and forth like this, Isaac saying the wolves kill them because the scars trained them to shoot at them. This circular logic continues with Malcolm retorting, "Because you broke the truce," and Isaac saying, "Because you broke the truce." They can't even keep track of who started it and who did what first, like a chicken versus the egg scenario, an endless cycle of violence, a relentless tit-for-tat between the two groups. Malcolm tells Isaac, "You're going to lose." And Isaac responds, "We have automatic weapons and hospitals. You lunatics have bolt-action rifles, bows and arrows, and superstition. So tell me, how are we going to lose?" And Malcolm responds ominously, "Every day one of your wolves comes to see the truth and takes her into their heart. Every day a wolf leaves you to take the holy mortification to become a Seraphite, and none of us ever leave to become a wolf." So apparently, wolves have been converting to the Seraphite cult little by little, and once people join that cult, they never leave. The holy mortification, I'm guessing, must be the ceremony in which they receive the deep cuts on each side of their face, as we've seen the same scars on all the Seraphites' faces, even children. I haven't played the video games, but I'm guessing that's what Malcolm is referring to, and also, it makes sense that a cult like this would pop up in the aftermath of an apocalypse. Probably more than one out there. People trying to make sense of what happened and find purpose again. The Seraphites are clearly outmatched in terms of weaponry and resources like the wolves, hospitals, and weapons, as Isaac says, but from what Malcolm says, they have the advantage of attracting wolves to come over to their side by winning the war of ideas. So eventually, it could take a long time, but they could outnumber the wolves if this continues. Isaac threatens to burn every part of Malcolm until he tells him where the next attack will be, but Malcolm just holds out his hand to be burned again. And Isaac realizes he won't get any information out of him, so he just stops the torture and shoots him dead instead. Outside the room, the other guard's face is revealed, and it's the young man who Isaac took under his wing when he defected from Fedra and joined the W.L.F. No longer looking like a nervous deer in the headlights, he now has a cynical face and coldly says, "Good, Scar got what he deserved." Clearly, he's gone through a metamorphosis and he's a mindless follower of Isaac and the W.L.F. now. And this group is no better than Fedra. Whatever ideals they may have had in the beginning, they have devolved into a group that is just as violent, ruthless, and oppressive. Meanwhile, Ellie and Dina enter a W.L.F. building under cover of night as planned, where they find a dead soldier full of bows and arrows, a wolf obviously killed by the Seraphites. The wolf emblem is indicative of their violent nature, just as the firefly name was indicative of hope in the darkness and illustrates the difference in their philosophy. Fireflies also employed violence, but they were trying to work toward an altruistic goal of curing humanity of Cordyceps through Ellie. Of course, we can disagree, and I have personally, on the ethics of their methodology, but at least they had a constructive goal and hope for mankind. But getting back to this scene, Ellie and Dina find something even more disturbing, a room with 5 disembodied W.L.F. soldiers hanging by their necks on display, their intestines dangling out of their bodies in gruesome fashion. On the wall, Ellie sees a message painted in blood that says, "Feel her love," a reference to their deceased prophet along with the Seraphite symbol. The irony of a message about love being written in blood is pretty clear. Ellie recognizes the symbol from the outfits on the dead bodies they had seen on the way to Seattle. And then Dina finds the W.L.F radio and grabs it just before several wolves show up, and they both take cover. The wolves are horrified to find their comrades murdered in this fashion. The leader of the group orders them to cut down the bodies while they search the area for Seraphites. Ellie amazingly winds up tackling one of the wolves and puts him in a chokehold, overpowering him despite her much smaller size, thanks to Jessie training her in judo fighting. Another wolf shows up, though, and aims a gun at her. Then Dina arrives just in time to shoot him, and the two of them escape after Ellie stabs the man she had tackled, and they go out the window unharmed and crawl through a narrow opening into a transit tunnel where they can't be easily followed. They proceed to hide, but there's more than one threat approaching. Both the wolves and the infected show up. You see, this is why it's so foolish for these groups to be fighting amongst themselves and seeking revenge. None of them would be in this dangerous situation right now if they weren't fighting each other. The wolves and the Seraphites, and Ellie coming on this revenge mission against Abby's group. Dina listens for the clickers and counts 5 infected nearby. They watch as the infected attack the wolves who have entered the building, actually doing them a favor, while the area is illuminated with the W.L.F's striking red emergency flares. Ellie and Dina run into a tilted train carriage as a horde of infected bang on the outside and start trying to break through the windows, in yet another heart-pounding action sequence. This season has really amped up the pace of the action, and it's really impressive. They climb up through a hatch just in time and escape through the top as the infected are busting in. But they aren't quite fast enough with their getaway. It seems like they might be home free as they've gotten some distance from the horde, but they aren't quite fast enough. Dina gets caught on the other side of a turnstile from Ellie with an infected attacking her. And while Dina watches in shock, Ellie reaches through the gap to save Dina and gets bitten instead. Dina sees the unmistakable bloody bite mark on Ellie's arm, coincidentally close to her old one that she had covered with a tattoo, which Dina is unaware about. The two of them find shelter for the night in a nearby theater, but Ellie has forgotten an important detail that she really should have shared with Dina before now, while undertaking such a dangerous mission together. Dina doesn't know that she's immune to the virus. So, to Ellie's horror, Dina tearfully points her gun at her, and Ellie has to do some fast talking to prevent her from firing. Pleading with Dina to listen, Ellie spills her secret of immunity and says she'll go to sleep on a nearby chair, and Dina can keep the gun pointed at her all night. Then she'll see Ellie hasn't turned by morning. And then when Ellie wakes up, she shows Dina that she doesn't have the Cordyceps symptoms like tremors or confusion, finally convincing her that she's immune. Emotional Dina approaches Ellie, having been convinced that she was going to lose her. And finally, she impulsively kisses Ellie, and they end up sleeping together, right on the spot. Kind of an odd time for their first sexual experience together. But after that close call with almost losing Ellie, Dina's inhibitions just come down, and they wake up the next morning on the floor, where Dina explains to Ellie that when she was a kid, she told her mother that she likes both girls and boys, but her mother told her she can only like boys, so she's repressed that part of herself. And that's why she kept trying to make things work with Jesse, even though he wasn't the right one for her. Ellie understands that Dina was just scared, not trying to lead her on. And Dina says she had been imagining a life with Ellie raising her baby together, not even knowing if Ellie wanted that, but Ellie does say she wants that with her. And in a cute moment, Ellie says, "I'm going to be a dad." Now, she's only ever had one parental figure in her entire life, and that was Joel, so it's understandable that she'd think of herself in that role. And it's also just her trademark humor. Then the two of them hear a familiar name mentioned on the W.L.F walkie-talkie, a member of Abby's group. Nearby. They step outside and spot the location where she is at the present. Ellie, normally consumed by her thirst for vengeance, though, pulls herself back and remembers Dina's pregnancy with concern. She tells Dina that they don't have to go through with this now. And I commend her for that. She loves Dina, and that matters more to her than revenge. The only sensible thing to do would be to turn back now, if nothing else for the sake of Dina's unborn child. But Dina just takes her hand and says, "Together," and they both seem to agree without further discussion that they'll just continue on their revenge mission. Which is beyond foolish, if you ask me, and not what Joel would want for Ellie or Dina, who he also looked at like a daughter. He would want them to go back to Jackson and live their lives as happily as they can and raise Dina's child together. As insidious and deadly as the Cordyceps infection is, the more dangerous contagion is actually the capacity of human nature to senselessly attack, distrust, hate, and oppress each other. Look how the commune operates in Jackson by contrast. They represent the best of human nature. They live peacefully together in a commune, share all their resources, share responsibilities, and look out for each other. And look at the kind of quality of life they actually manage to have there, even in the midst of an apocalypse. New Year's Eve dances, potluck dinners. It's amazing. They don't even seem to have any crime. It's practically a little utopia. A council makes major decisions together, listening to input from the residents at town meetings as well. There is no single leader of the place. By contrast, we learned earlier this season that Eugene had said, as a former Firefly, he knew of multiple groups further west that were fighting amongst themselves all the time, and he always thought it was stupid. If they banded together, they could deal with the Cordyceps threat much better. But even a global pandemic and apocalypse wasn't enough to bring humanity together. Unfortunately, one of the most prominent themes of this show is humanity's deeply rooted tendency to destroy itself through division, violence, vengeance, and hate. The worst disease plaguing the planet here isn't Cordyceps. It's a lack of empathy. It's the endless cycle of violence. This is the kind of message that the world really needs to hear, because it's the same in real life. Even the COVID pandemic wasn't enough to bring people together. Quite the contrary, it led to even more division, infighting, and vitriol. You'd think that a common enemy like a deadly pandemic could unite people, but that didn't happen, and it sure isn't happening on The Last of Us, even in these much more extreme circumstances. It's depressing to say, but I think even if an alien invasion happened, we'd still never be able to unite against the common enemy and achieve world peace. So again, the message of this show is one that the world sorely needs to hear, but unfortunately, the way The Last of Us is handling its writing, people are struggling to empathize with Abby, overlooking the point and turning against the show. And I understand that. We were all emotionally invested in Joel. At least a lot of us were, including me, and his death was a hard pill to swallow. But I would urge you to do what I'm doing and try to look at the big picture. Look at what this show is trying to teach us about the need for empathy, humanity's self-destructive tendency toward division, and the futility of the endless cycle of violence. Now, I want to know what you think. Was episode 4 enough of an improvement over the slower episode 3 to keep you invested and willing to continue watching the show? What do you think of the wolves and the scars with their own endless cycle of violence? Should Ellie and Abby turn back and give up their revenge mission, at the very least because Dina is pregnant? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. And until next time, keep on deep diving, and let's see what we can uncover together.